The train doors opened with a metallic groan that echoed across the dry plains. For the German women standing inside the rail cars, the sound carried a finality they could not yet understand. They had crossed oceans under guard, sailed through waters still haunted by mines and submarines, and traveled thousands of miles across a country they had only known as an enemy. But nothing prepared them for Texas. Heat rolled across the platform in shimmering waves. The sky stretched endlessly overhead, wider than anything they had ever seen in Europe. Dust swirled beneath their boots as they stepped down one by one, uniforms faded, suitcases worn, faces marked by exhaustion and uncertainty. It was 1944. The war still raged in Europe. Cities burned. Armies advanced and collapsed. But here, in the American Southwest, life seemed almost untouched by destruction. Ranches stretched to the horizon. Windmills turned slowly in the distance. Cattle grazed lazily beneath a blazing sun. To the American soldiers overseeing them, these women were prisoners. To themselves, they were something else entirely. Survivors caught between worlds. Many had been nurses, clerks, radio operators, or auxiliaries attached to German units in France. When Allied forces advanced rapidly across Europe, chaos followed. Records were lost. Civilians and military personnel were swept together into detention camps. Some women were transported overseas simply because the system had nowhere else to place them. Now they stood in Texas, thousands of miles from home, unsure whether their families were alive or dead. One woman, 22-year-old Anna Keller, paused as her boots touched the ground. She inhaled deeply, feeling the hot wind brush against her face. "This doesn't feel like war," she whispered in German. And she was right. Camp fences surrounded them soon after arrival, barbed wire, guard towers, wooden barracks arranged in orderly rows. But the atmosphere inside the camp was not what they expected. Guards were firm but respectful. Meals were simple but plentiful. There were schedules, routines, even recreation periods. It was captivity, but it was not cruelty. Still, uncertainty weighed heavily. Letters from home were delayed for months. Rumors spread constantly. Some women believed Germany would win. Others feared total destruction. No one truly knew. At night, they lay in narrow bunks staring at wooden ceilings, listening to unfamiliar sounds drifting across the plains. Coyotes howling, windmills creaking, distant guitar music from nearby ranch houses. That music fascinated them most. It carried loneliness and warmth at the same time, a strange echo of emotions they could not name. Within weeks, another unexpected development arrived. Texas had a problem. With millions of American men deployed overseas, farms and ranches faced severe labor shortages. Crops risked rotting in fields. Cattle required constant care. The U.S. government approved a controversial solution: supervised prisoner labor. German POWs would work American land. The women volunteered quickly. Idleness inside camp meant endless thinking about bombings, missing family members, uncertain futures. Hard work offered distraction. And so began the unimaginable. German prisoners working alongside American ranchers. Enemies sharing tools, meals, and long days beneath the same relentless sun. At first, interactions were cautious. Language barriers created awkward silence. Guards watched carefully. But work has a universal rhythm. Sweat erased some boundaries. Effort built quiet respect. Ranch families noticed something surprising. These enemy women were not monsters. They were daughters, sisters, young people far from home. And slowly, something began to change. No one realized it yet, but seeds were being planted. Seeds of friendship, and eventually, love. By early 1945, routines had formed between the camp and surrounding ranches. Trucks arrived in the mornings to transport labor crews. Guards supervised every movement, but the atmosphere gradually softened as trust developed. Anna Keller found herself assigned repeatedly to the same ranch, owned by the Turner family. The first time she met their son, James Turner, he barely spoke. He removed his hat politely, a gesture deeply rooted in Texas culture, and nodded. "Ma says you work hard," he said cautiously. She answered cautiously, her English uncertain. "I try." That was all. But small moments linger. James noticed how carefully she repaired equipment. She noticed his quiet patience with animals. Neither intended to think about the other again, yet they did. Days turned into weeks. Conversations grew slightly longer. He asked about Germany. She described forests, snowy winters, and church bells. She asked about Texas. He told stories of drought years, cattle drives, and county fairs. They were different worlds, yet both understood hardship. The war touched everyone. One afternoon, Anna received a letter informing her that her hometown had been heavily bombed. Entire streets were gone, her father's workshop destroyed. No word about her mother. She sat alone behind the barn, hands shaking. James approached cautiously, stopping several feet away to respect rules. "You all right?" he asked softly. She tried to speak, but couldn't. Tears came instead. He didn't move closer, he didn't touch her. He simply stayed nearby, silent. In that moment, the war disappeared. There was only grief, and two human beings sharing it. That was the true connection. Across Texas, similar stories unfolded. German women worked on farms owned by families whose sons were fighting in Europe, sometimes even against German soldiers. Yet hatred rarely appeared. Distance changed perspective. For many Texans, the prisoners were simply workers who needed kindness. Hospitality was instinct, and kindness is powerful. By spring 1945, news arrived that Germany had surrendered. Celebrations erupted across America. Inside the POW camp, reactions were mixed: relief, sorrow, fear, and uncertainty. Defeat meant the end of war, but also the collapse of their homeland. What would they return to? Would there even be homes left? Meanwhile, bonds with local communities had deepened. Church groups donated clothing, ranch wives shared recipes, children waved when trucks passed. And in quiet corners of ranches, conversations between prisoners and civilians grew more personal. Friendships became emotional lifelines. Some crossed into something deeper, but regulations were strict. Romantic relationships between POWs and civilians were forbidden, which only made emotions more complicated. Anna and James never spoke openly about feelings. They didn't need to. It was there, unspoken, undeniable. A connection formed not by choice, but by circumstance. Two people from opposite sides of a war finding comfort in each other. Summer 1945 brought new tension. Repatriation orders arrived. The prisoners would soon be sent back to Germany. For many women, the news created anxiety rather than relief. Germany lay in ruins, food shortages were severe, cities were rubble, families scattered or missing. Texas, by contrast, felt stable, peaceful, almost safe. Anna stared at her name on the departure list for a long time. Returning meant duty, staying meant uncertainty, and leaving meant saying goodbye to James. One evening, beneath a large cottonwood tree, they finally spoke honestly. "You go home soon," he said quietly. "Yes."
Silence lingered between them. "What will you do there?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe nothing is left." He swallowed hard before speaking again. "If you ever wanted to come back, I'd help." She looked at him stunned. "You would?" "Yes." It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't a promise. It was an opening. Hope. But hope came with cost. Her mother might still be alive in Germany. Staying in America could mean never seeing her again. War had already taken enough. Could she risk losing family forever? Days passed quickly after that conversation. Every moment felt heavier, more precious. Routine work became emotional memory. The final day arrived.